Daniel sat motionless at the dining table, his fingers trembling slightly as he took in the sight before him. Across from him sat the woman he had spent the last 20 years of his life with. The woman he had loved, sacrificed for, and built a life around. And now, with a look of smug satisfaction, she was about to rip that life apart. Sophia leaned back, arms crossed, chin tilted upward in defiance. Her eyes gleamed with triumph and disdain, a self-satisfied smirk tugging at her lips as she dropped the bombshell. "I finally found a real man," she declared. "He's a retired officer, a man with power and status. Don't even think about trying to stop me. He'll crush you." The words hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. But even in the face of betrayal, he refused to let his emotions control him. He had always prided himself on his composure, and he wouldn't let her see him break. His silence only seemed to embolden her, though. She leaned in closer, her smirk widening. "You should be grateful," she added, her voice dripping with arrogance. Daniel inhaled deeply, his mind flooding with memories. 2 decades of sacrifice, of long hours at work, of vacations postponed, of dreams set aside, all for her. And now, she dismissed it all with a cruel twist of words, as if none of it had ever mattered. It would have been easy to lash out, to demand answers, to let anger consume him. But Daniel knew better. Instead, he rose from his chair, his movements calm and deliberate. Without a word, he walked past her, reached for the front door, and pulled it open. "Don't look back, Sophia," he said, his voice steady. For a brief moment, her confidence faltered. But just as quickly as it wavered, it returned. She grabbed her keys, turned on her heel, and walked out without another word. The door clicked shut behind her, a sound final and unmistakable. The days that followed were suffocatingly silent, the emptiness of the house pressing in on him. But in that stillness, Daniel found clarity. He wasn't the failure Sophia had painted him to be. He had given his all, and now he was free. He refused to wallow in regret. Instead, he laced up an old pair of running shoes, shoes he hadn't worn in years, and stepped outside. The crisp morning air filled his lungs as he took his first few tentative steps. His body protested, the movement unfamiliar, but he pushed forward. By the end of the week, he was running faster, farther. With every stride, his strength returned, his determination reigniting like a long-dormant flame. At work, he threw himself into a long-forgotten project. Late nights and relentless effort led to a breakthrough, one that had once seemed impossible. When he finally presented his solution to a skeptical team, the room erupted in applause. Later that evening, his boss pulled him aside. "Daniel, this is exactly the kind of leadership we need." The words resonated deeply. These moments weren't just professional triumphs, they were proof. Proof of the man he had always been capable of becoming. As a software engineer, his skills were in high demand. He immersed himself in a major project, one that not only earned him recognition, but also a substantial financial boost. His career soared, his confidence strengthened. He was no longer the man Sophia had walked away from. He was something greater. And yet, despite all his progress, her final words lingered in his mind. A real man. She had spoken of her new partner, Michael, as if he were a savior, someone who could give her a life Daniel never could. But Daniel didn't waste time seeking revenge. Life had its own way of balancing the scales. Months passed, and while Daniel thrived, Sophia's new life began to show cracks. He had no interest in keeping track of her, but mutual acquaintances and social media made it impossible to ignore. At first, she had basked in Michael's attention, flaunting her so-called upgrade. But reality soon set in. Michael had a volatile temper, a gambling problem, money that once seemed endless drained fast. The whispers started, at social events and hushed conversations. Poor Sophia. She thought she was upgrading, but she walked straight into a disaster. At a networking event, Daniel overheard a colleague chuckle, shaking his head. "Did you hear? Michael got banned from the casino downtown. The guy's a mess." The puzzle pieces fell into place. Sophia's once glamorous life had unraveled into chaos. Then one evening, Daniel received a call from a mutual acquaintance. "You won't believe what's happening with Sophia." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Michael drowned last week. And now, there are rumors she regrets leaving you." Daniel felt no triumph in the news, only a quiet sense of vindication. She had chosen her own downfall. 1 year after Sophia left, Daniel received an invitation to an exclusive gala hosted by a major tech company he had partnered with. The event was filled with industry leaders, visionaries, people who mattered. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, standing tall, he exuded a quiet confidence. He was nothing like the man Sophia had written off as a failure. And then across the room he saw her. Sophia's eyes widened, her gaze locking onto him, taking in the way he moved, the effortless way he conversed with the CEO. There was no smugness in her expression now, only hesitation, uncertainty, regret. She fidgeted with the strap of her clutch, then finally gathered the courage to approach. "Daniel, you look good." There was a moment of silence, one that spoke louder than words. Daniel met her gaze, offered a polite smile and said, "Many thanks, Sophia." Her eyes flickered, regret clouding them for just a second. "I've heard about your project," she continued, voice softer now. "Congratulations. You've really made something of yourself." Daniel nodded. Then with deliberate ease he asked, "And how are things with Michael?" Her expression faltered. The confidence she once wore like armor crumbled. "It's complicated," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He had some difficulties." Daniel's smile didn't waver. "I'm sorry to hear that. I hope everything works out for you." She parted her lips as if to say more. But before she could, Daniel gave her a polite nod and excused himself. He felt nothing, no sadness, no anger. Only finality. That night, as Daniel stood on his balcony, looking out over the glowing city skyline, he understood something. Sophia's betrayal had been painful, yes, but it had also been the catalyst for his transformation. He had rebuilt himself piece by piece, stronger than ever. And in the end, he had proven something important, not to her but to himself. He was always more than she had ever imagined. A gentle breeze brushed past him, and in that moment, he realized something profound. Success wasn't about getting even. It was about rediscovering himself. Because in the end, karma always did the work. And the greatest revenge was thriving in their absence.